Welcome to History 111, Lecture 1, The First Peoples of the Americas. It's good to start by mentioning there are three different ways we can look at the past: archaeology, oral tradition, and history. Now, archaeology is concerned primarily with the physical objects that are left behind that can be analyzed and that we can use to learn about past societies, whereas oral tradition is those stories handed down from one generation to the next that contain a lot of cultural knowledge that we can dissect. History, on the other hand, relies primarily on written records to analyze a sequence of events. Now, do realize within the context of history, written records include not just things that are physically written down using standard languages, but also sometimes visual sources. For example, paintings about a battle. For example, there's a tapestry of the Battle of Hastings. That's a historical written record, even though it doesn't use written language. When it comes to the question of who were the first peoples in the Americas, we have to rely very heavily on archaeology because this all happens before the invention of written language. Now, there is a debate about exactly when the first peoples came to the Americas, but between 12 to 16,000 years ago are the most widely accepted time frames, though there is some recent evidence that suggests that it could have been longer than that. At the moment, the most accepted theory among academics is that people from Asia crossed the Bering land bridge to get to North America, and this land bridge was opened between 25,000 and 11,000 years ago. And what that has to do with is because global sea levels were at a different place back then because of the Ice Age, there was a physical land connection between Asia and North America that people could walk across. It's not very wide, but it was just enough that people can get there. Because you do have to realize that Asia and North America at that point are only 50 miles across, so if the sea levels go down just a little bit, it becomes possible to walk from one continent to the next. We also need to understand this within the context what's generally accepted about the early migrations of man. So man began, so far as science knows, in Africa and then spread out into Europe, into Asia, and then, as we already mentioned, across the Bering Straits into North America, and then from there throughout the Americas. Now, this first group of people to come to the Americas, we refer to them as the Clovis people, and we date their arrival at about 11 to 13,000 years ago. And importantly, these people left behind a lot of artifacts that have been scientifically dated, and really important is a particular style of arrowhead, and that's how we tracked their various settlements and expansion. Now, throughout North America, there's a lot of identified Clovis sites, and again, that really comes down to identifying them based on these arrowheads. And we've learned through these various sites that they live by hunting big game, and a lot of that big game is now extinct. The prevailing theory is that the Clovis people are the ancestors of all Native American groups, and the Clovis way of life, we do believe, ends with the extinction of the animals they hunt, and at that point, we believe the different groups split off from one another and form their own cultures in different locations throughout North America. Now, while many genetic studies suggest that all Native American groups can be linked to a single founding population, some recent evidence suggests that further study is required here. While scientific evidence points in favor of the Bering land bridge and Clovis first theories, this is contrary to Native American oral histories. These oral histories state that Native Americans have always been in North America, and there are no known Native American oral histories that refer to any type of migration that could possibly describe the things that we're talking about here. So there is some controversy related to which of these theories happens to be right. Now again, according to the prevailing theory, that after the extinction of all the different animals that the Clovis people lived off of, they split into different cultures that were based largely on the geography of the area in which they lived. And a good example of that is the southwestern cultures. They build pueblos, some of which are still inhabited, and some of these are in fact the oldest continually inhabited settlements within the United States. And these particular pueblos make a lot of advances in irrigation and pottery, and early cultures such as the Anasazi disappeared for unknown reasons. Some Pueblo peoples migrated and resettled during a period of extreme drought, and that drought is believed to have lasted about 300 years. But by and large, they use these irrigation and this type of housing to adapt to a desert landscape. Another good example is the Mississippian culture. Now, this group did not leave behind any complex structures like the Pueblos, but evidence suggests there may have been large flourishing settlements, and a lot of that evidence comes by excavating areas surrounding large burial mounds that still exist. Now, Cahokia, for example, may have had up to about 40,000 inhabitants, and it appears to have been abandoned right around the year 1400. However, at its peak, this may have been the largest settlement in North America prior to 1800. Now, the large-scale settlements, by and large from this culture, were all abandoned prior to European contact, and when the Europeans did come in, they found people in this region living in relatively small settlements. So what's the big idea here? Well, first and foremost, there's the Clovis people. And when the animals they hunted went extinct, this meant they had to develop distinct and different cultures throughout the Americas, and those are really being driven by geographic factors. See you in the next lecture.